Hello and welcome to Books and Beverages. It's great to see everyone. We don't have as big a turnout as usual, but the summer seems to be a bit smaller turnout. I am usually the regulars know me from the tech side of things. I'm usually behind the scenes. My cohorts kind of left me today, but Sue did manage to rush back from her vacation to be here. So well done, Sue. Also, because this is the sci-fi one, that's my specialty, so that's why I'm doing it as well. So I haven't been doing this for a while, but I do have my own podcast. So if you like the science fiction, you like my style of interviewing, check out Alternate Futures podcast, and where I specifically interview science fiction authors, but also about their writing structure. So there's lots of good writing information there as well. So today I'm here with Lydia L.G. Jenkins. So Lydia is an author, a book lover, coffee drinker, editor, and I've learned also a book marketing consultant. So when she isn't immersed in writing dystopian worlds, you'll either find her reading at a coffee shop, playing netball, or spending time with friends in sunny England, which it has been sometimes.
It has been, that's true at the moment, so that's nice,
exactly.
Isn't it?
So the Son of Endless Days was her debut novel, and it's the first novel, which I think she has there. She can demonstrate if she wants, but first novel in her Merit Hunters series, which is a dystopian listed as young adult fiction, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And what she hopes to do is encourage others in their purpose, worth, and faith through writing for years to come. And we'll get into some of the sort of where that fits in with your dystopian writing. So, Lydia, it's great to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here. It's my first time in Harrogate Library as well, so beautiful building.
So we will be talking about your writing, but first I'd like to get to know you a little bit more. Sure. So one of the things that jumps out from your bio is we have a line. It's quite embarrassing how you schedule your mornings around your coffee. So you sound like you literally like your coffee.
I wouldn't say I'm a coffee expert. Like, don't come to me to say what's your favorite bean or anything like that. But I only have one coffee a day. I have one caffeinated drink a day because otherwise I get the shakes. But I really enjoy the taste of coffee, and often my morning, my motivation is driven by when I get my cup of coffee. So I don't often have it first thing. I'll do some work or some writing first. So I reward myself with coffee. So I see my morning quite structured around that one lovely cup of coffee.
Excellent.
Yeah.
My wife's Italian, so coffee is a part of our family, although I don't drink it, so much to her chagrin. But
oh, that's great. If someone gifts you with coffee, she gets it all, right?
Yeah.
My husband doesn't like chocolate, so whenever we get chocolate, I'm like, excellent.
Excellent.
All for me.
Excellent. So you also studied literature at university, and you are, like you say, you study literature, you read audiobooks when you're cleaning, or you listen to audiobooks when you're cleaning. You're never without some kind of book. You also you're an editor, and say you're kind of immersed in the whole book world. Does that become overwhelming at some points?
It's really interesting. So just to give you a bit of context to my career, I did literature at University of York, and I remember very vividly being in the library in my third year. I was finishing my dissertation, and I said to a friend, I'm done with books. I have had enough of books. I've had enough of academia. I can't do it anymore. If I read another book, I think I'll die. Like, I was just so I'm done. And so then I went into a marketing career. So I was 6 years in marketing, doing, well, there's a bit of a context within that 6 years, but we'll come on to that because it was the reason I wrote the books in the first place. But working for first an estate agent, I worked for Your Move and Reed's Raid's estate agents in their marketing department. That was my first job out of university. Then I moved on to another job, which I quickly got made redundant from. But then I worked for 3.5 years for a company in Harrogate, actually. They were based on Hornbeam Park originally. They're now in Leeds, but they called the Alternative Board, and they help business owners build their businesses and lead better lives, basically. And I was digital marketing exec there. And so that was the context of my career. Throughout that, I started to read books again. I did start to like books again, but more for pleasure. And then the job in between that I got made redundant from was basically a startup, and I was 23 at the time, and I was very much like, this is going to be a really glamorous job. It's going to be international travel. I'm going to climb that career ladder. I'm going to be really successful. And they made me redundant after 6 weeks. It was like, that's not happening. I just pulled the short straw. The main office was based in Hong Kong, and they basically realised, oh, we can't afford to operate in the UK market, and they allowed them to hire me, a whole thing. But that was a moment where I realised I had quite an unhealthy relationship with work and its connection to my self-worth. I was very much placing all of my value of who I was on what I did. And all of that stuff in terms of the glamour, the good job, all of that, it was all about how other people saw me. And that was like a moment where I was like, that's probably not that healthy. And that led me to read the books. But then through that, my books are hybrid published. I now work for that publisher as a marketing manager 2 days a week, and then do freelance editing and proofreading for authors, but also doing marketing services for authors. So it might be helping you optimize your Amazon listings with what we call metadata and keywords so that they rank higher on search, or Facebook advertising, or social media management. So helping you build an Instagram account or a TikTok account, because BookTok's a massive space to operate in. So yeah, that journey is just like, basically from that moment of saying I never want to read another book, I've ended up reading books full time again.
Yeah. So by the way, authors in the audience, you got a good plug there for your book marketing. So what was it? Well, first of all, I mean, you're quite young to have made that realization, so that's pretty amazing. But it also has informed your writing, and we will get to that in a little bit. So what was it like to return to reading for joy? Because I mean, I'm kind of in that state right now. So with my podcast, I'm trying to keep up with all the reading, and it becomes, it's work, right? So, so what was it like to return to read for joy? And then did that sort of keep you inspired as you went back into publishing and author?
Yeah, I mean, it was just enjoyable. I mean, I remember the book that did it for me was Wuthering Heights. So I read very widely. I read all sorts of things, but I did that book at A-level, and I don't know when it was. I was like, I'm just gonna read it again, and I saw it in a whole new light. I read it, and when I finished it, I was just like, that is an incredible book. Like, it's incredible, and I was so excited. And I was like, what? You spent a year studying this. Why have you only just realised how incredible it was? And I think that was the moment where I just got to read it for pleasure. I didn't have to analyse why the author used that colour or why the author did that and what it meant for foreshadowing and like all of that sort of prescriptive stuff that you have to do when you study literature. It was just nice to be able to do that, and then it just rolled from there, and I started reading for pleasure again, and I still manage to do it now. But I would say what I tend to do is I read stuff that is very different to what I might be doing for my work. So the publishing house I work for is a Christian publishing house. So it's a lot of non-fiction stuff and some fiction, but you won't get like a sort of an easy read romance comedy. So I'll read a bit of rom-com for pleasure. So it's a bit removed, I guess. Yeah.
Right. So do you intentionally read separate from your genre so that you don't? Because some authors don't want to accidentally take in, let's say, works they've seen in other books, for example.
I don't know if I intentionally do that. I read a lot in my genre as well, because I think that's important from a business marketing perspective to think, well, what are the sort of books that are currently coming out and what are the things that audiences are reacting to? So I think that's still important to do. I just think I read widely is my answer. I just think I enjoy a lot of different types of books. So I don't intentionally do it. I just go on recommendations and that sort of thing.
Right. Do you have, put you on the spot, do you have a favorite book that's just come out that's making its way around?
My goodness.
You don't have to answer. I'm just curious.
No, I have a favorite book that I could talk about, but it's not just come out.
Okay.
So that's Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult, which is, I don't know if anybody's read that, but it's quite an amazing book. It's essentially about a black midwife in America who is accused of causing the death of a baby who is the baby of a white supremacist. And you basically get both perspectives and the lawyer's perspective for the case and everything. And it's a remarkable book. I definitely recommend that. So yeah, that's very different to Dystopian.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe yes, maybe
Well,
not.
maybe, yeah.
So when did you decide to take on your own writing then? I mean, you obviously had this hate-love relationship.
Yeah. So it was at that moment when I got made redundant from that job. And I think I was in a place where I really needed to process some of those feelings. And I was just like, why do I feel so, I don't know, like I've got to achieve and I've got to be this type of person. And if I'm not this type of person, people are going to think less of me. And like I was trying to figure out all of those lies really and why I was believing them. And I don't know, I just had a moment of, why don't I write a book about it? And I went to the pub with my husband and I was like, I think I've got to write a book. Like I never thought about writing. I've done a lot of writing because of writing essays and that sort of thing.
Right,
but in terms of writing an actual novel, I hadn't ever thought about doing that. And so we went to the pub and we had a conversation and I was like, what if I created, because I always enjoyed like the Hunger Games as a teenager and that sort of thing. And the thing with dystopian fiction is obviously with the likes of George Orwell and the novel We and all of that is it's saying, and it's a narrative, it's a message to society, of a warning of saying, if we carry on this way, it's not going to be good. So I think dystopian lended itself very well because I felt like I had something to say and something to process and something to figure out. So yeah, I guess I decided to process a lot of that struggle that you go through, which we can talk a bit more about, as someone in your 20s in a social media world. I processed that through putting it down into a dystopian world.
Right.
It was quite a long-winded way of doing it. Like,
yeah, more than just a blog post, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway.
So when you decided to take on the novel idea, I mean, presumably, like many authors, you have that excitement. I'm going to do this, but was there also some fear or some like, I don't know what I'm doing? I mean, you did literature in university, but I don't know how much writing that involved in terms of creative writing.
It's really interesting because that was, how old am I now? That was 6 years ago. And I don't really remember. I definitely had a sense of, yeah, it's all a little bit of a blur. I definitely had a sense of, let's just give this a go. There was a definite excitement of, let's see what happens. And I never really intended it to become anything more than it was. I never intended it to become like that I'd end up in a book publishing career. I never even thought about that. I just wrote it. And yeah. I don't know.
Okay. So the eternal question that I think all authors probably in our panel get asked at least is, are you a pantser or a plotter?
Oh, I'm a pantser, but I'm trying to be a plotter.
Especially when you're building an entire world with multiple. You've told me you've finished the 4th book.
Yes, literally this week. I sent it to the editor this week.
So that should involve quite a bit of plotting through your world, especially at this stage.
Yeah. I mean, I found the last book much easier to plan because it all happens on one day, the last book. So in terms of where all the different characters are and I didn't have to think much about timelines other than continuity with the other books. So that was slightly easier to actually be a planner in that instance. But generally, I just write as I feel.
I'm curious though, with the editing and the book marketing, etc. Because I mean, obviously, imposter syndrome is something that authors face a lot. Yeah. Do you ever get that when let's say you've read a really good book that you're editing, and do you ever think, oh, what am I doing? Like, or is it just push that to the side and say, oh, no, my stuff's good?
Absolutely. I don't think, I always get imposter syndrome. It always happens in terms of those thoughts of, well, I haven't sold many of my books, and if I'd done it this way, it would have gone better, or if only I'd been smart enough not to start with a series and done that other book idea. Like that always happens. But actually what I've realized is that a lot about life is almost failing forwards. But you have to do it. You have to make a decision, and you have to stick to the decision and be like, no, this is the way I've done it. And I've learned so much through it. And actually, often that imposter syndrome, it's just low self-esteem at the end of the day. It's just you saying to yourself, oh, I'm not good enough. When actually, is there any evidence for that? Most of the time, no. And actually, it's getting over that and being like, no, let's just go for it. And yeah, it's easier said than done. Some days it's really hard.
So are you just a positive person, or do you have like a mantra you go through to all this?
I'm generally a very positive person. I mean, I have a faith as well, so that helps me a lot as well. And I have very supportive friends and family. My support network and that connection and valuing the relationships of the people around me very much helps for that attitude, I think. I'm not a positive person every day.
At least
I've just
put you get your coffee
that out there. Yeah, you will see me on days where I'm very negative, like, and then I go to bed and it's all right the next day.
Excellent. So I wanted to plug your publisher, or give you a chance to plug your publisher. You're published by Grace and Down Publishing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because some of the subject material your books deal with, I think, is it I forget which one. Is it, I have it written down. Is it Grace that's a qualified psychotherapist?
Yes, Sarah Grace, yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting link with your material as well. Does
Yeah,
that come up at all? Do you guys discuss this subject material?
Not very often, actually, no. So she's an amazing woman, actually. She's a dyslexic. And so just to put context of the publishing company, there's 3 different imprints. There's Malcolm Down Publishing, there's Sarah Grace Publishing, and there's Grace and Down Publishing. Grace and Down is very much for the general market, so less Christian content and like church-based content, like my books. And then Sarah Grace Publishing is a dyslexic-friendly publisher. So Sarah Grace has worked with Cambridge University and typographers to create a new dyslexic-friendly font. So that imprint is very much pioneering accessible reading, and which is incredible. And then Malcolm Down is more Christian living stuff. So that's the publishing imprints, if you like. Yeah.
All right. And how have you found I always have to ask this, the marketing phase? You are a marketing consultant now, at least. So have you found that that's made things easier? You do have a bit of a marketing background.
Yes and no, in the sense that because I have marketing experience, I sometimes feel like I know how things should be done. But actually, for certain types of books, you have to have very different marketing strategies. So it's learning, okay, you can't do everything. So what is the strategy that's going to be most effective for this book, in its genre, in its market? Because I don't have time to do all of the marketing for my books. So I think it's about prioritizing the thing that's going to be most effective.
If you had one message to give to authors with, let's say, starting their backlist, regarding marketing, what would it be?
Do you mean marketing books that their backlist?
So let's say, let's say an author comes to you with, like, one or 2 novels, and they're looking for advice on how to approach marketing. What would be, let's say, the one most important piece of advice that you think you'd give them?
Make sure your book's the best it can be. Have they already got reviews? Have they got reviews that say this is really enjoyable read, the plot and the pacing and all of that was like that, it's solid, the manuscript is solid.
Right.
Because the worst thing that can happen really is that you've got an incredible book cover, you spend money on marketing, and the marketing's effective, but then the actual product isn't any good. Because that actually, think about if you wanted to write more and more books, what does that do for your reputation if those books, it's got really low reviews? So I'd say make sure the book's the best it can be.
So hire an editor, especially.
Yeah, and a proofreader
as well.
Two proofreaders, because those typos always seem to slip through. How does that happen? You have like a team of 5 people look at it, and it's like, right. We've still got mesmerized instead of memorized.
Yeah, I've heard some interesting stories on that regard as well.
Yeah.
So moving on to your books and your series then. So you have written young adult dystopian, as we mentioned. The Son of Endless Days is the first book, which is right there. This is the Merit series.
Merit Hunters series.
Merit Hunters series. So I guess we'll get you to read some in a moment. What I wanted to just bring up, because we don't get a lot of science fiction here. So there is a Canadian, American, British author. Yes, he's got passports from all those countries. Cory Doctorow, who likes to say that science fiction isn't trying to predict the future, but it's shining a light on the present, which in some ways your story seems to indicate as well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, with that in mind, I wanted the audience to keep this in mind as we move into yours. But we did want to say, so yours is young adult, but it does seem like, what age did you envision your characters?
Yeah, so really it's actually, the genre is probably new adult. And that's a sort of an emerging genre now, but not a lot of people know what that is. So that's sort of the age of probably like 16 to 30s, maybe more 18 to 30s, when teenagers go through that transition of becoming adults, basically. Yeah, so I wrote it for people in their 20s. And the reason I did that, and I'm very passionate about that age group, is because I'm 30 this year. So apparently life starts at 30. Apparently it's all uphill from here. I'm looking for encouragement. So yeah, and reflecting on the 20s, and actually in this sort of social media digital world, a lot of people in their 20s feel very lost, because you have several things that happen. You have this thing where your friends are no longer at the same stage that you are, but you can see everything that they're doing online. So all of their lives look so much better than yours.
It's all nicely curated as well, right?
Yeah, it's all a highlight reel. And then you basically think, oh, right, I better use my 20s to travel. Oh, but I can't not build a career. Oh, and I've also got to save for a house. And I've also got to be healthy. And that's all coming through social media because people are doing these things.
Yeah.
And you start to feel quite lost. And then also you're paralyzed by the amount of choice that you've got, because you can see all this choice online, like how many job opportunities you can see online, and then you don't do anything. So it's like, oh, and then you just sort of feeling like, well, if I've got to do all of this stuff and I don't do all of this stuff, I'm not going to have achieved anything. And then I'm not going to be as good to society. I won't look as good. And it becomes this whole spiral. And you just have then really low self-esteem, really low self-worth, when the reality is that each of us is so special and individual that none of our paths or timelines look the same, and they don't have to, and that's okay. And so the premise of the dystopian world is that it's a world where only the productive are rewarded. So everybody has a merit score, everyone has a watch that tracks their points. It's very similar to the social credit system in China. So depending on how you spend your time, whether you're eating healthily, if you have a chocolate bar, you're going to lose some points for that. And whether you're working, whether the networks that you have, that you're educating each other, that it's always about progress, and you've always got to be doing something, you've always got to achieve. And it's basically following a young couple, AJ and Jenny, who are both trying to make it into the glorified quarters, which is the highest faction in the society. If you make it there, you've made it. And they're both working really hard, but they each have secrets that threaten that end goal. Jenny's on the edge of burnout. Burnout is seen as a very weak thing to happen. And AJ, I won't tell you his secrets because that's a massive spoiler. But both of what they're trying to hide in this effort to get to the top will threaten their relationship and their status in society. So yeah, it's sort of following them as people in their 20s battling with all of this stuff. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out that there are multiple kinds of dystopians. I usually read cyberpunk, so that's more of a dark, gritty one. You have the Hunger Games kind of. And you've picked your dystopia, which is kind of the corporate dystopia in a way, as you've described, which is sort of clean on the outside and rotten on the inside.
A bit of a false utopia,
yeah,
really.
Exactly, yeah. So with that, maybe now we've set the setting, as it were, you could give us a short reading.
Sure, yeah. So I picked one that is actually set in a library because I thought that would be quite appropriate, seeing as we're in a library. Okay. Jenny felt worse in the morning. A few hours after her shopping date with AJ, she sat on a bench outside the library, turning her wrist back and forth to admire her new watch strap. Get back inside. She knew she needed to. Though the outside air was hot and clammy, it was just fresh enough to ease the headache. She hoped AJ wasn't thinking about her. In between their joking and pleasantries, he'd spent the entire time in watch by command asking if she was okay. He knew something was up, but she couldn't let on. She could handle it. Heading towards the door, she held her head in her hands to at least try to lessen the pounding. The library was always rammed on a Saturday, even when the sun was setting. She hated the place for everything but the immediate merit. Exhaling deeply, she looked up and noticed a woman from across the square. She was beautiful. Jenny couldn't make out all her features as different people wandered across the line between them, but she noticed the way her long brown hair flowed gorgeously down her back. She wasn't doing anything special, just standing in the sun looking at her screen, in a loose red dress that was drifting in the slight breeze. Jenny closed her eyes and placed the girl next to a waterfall. The brightness of her dress contrasted with the greens and blues of nature. She considered going home to paint or beginning a sketch in her notebook. Yet when she opened her eyes again, her model was gone, disbanded into the life of the city. Get back inside. Jenny rose from the bench, her mind still partially fixated on the girl and the ideas she could inspire, when she felt the deep soak of sweat on her back. Feeling around her, she realised she had dredged her blouse, before grabbing her head as the ache began to stab itself deep over her cheeks and her jaw. Making it to the library bathroom, she stared into the mirror. A red circle appeared, accompanied by the voice of technology. Your skin is presenting only a 30% moisture. Jenny slammed her hand at the mirror's controls to silence it. She tried to conceal the redness around her eyes, noting that her skin was almost as bright as the girl's dress. Was she just tired? Stressed? What was happening to her? I was M500 by the time I was your age. Her father's words were back. She threw off her blouse and put it in her bag. After adjusting her bra straps beneath her vest, she breathed deeply and staggered back out into the library, breathing through the pain in her head. She walked back through the building, but all she could detect was blurred figures and strange shapes as her vision began to suffer. Jenny wandered past many desks, screens and distracted eyes, all learning more contributory skills. As she struggled to walk in a straight line, drones dodged her as they served people with requested files, drinks, food, or anything else they fancied. She spent too much of her life in this place, she decided, as a dull ache crept into her chest. It was depressing how many nights she'd worked through on skip sleep, either here at home or at the office. Sometimes in her slippers, just so she was comfortable in some way because there was no other way she could be. Jenny's vision was suffering more, and as she arrived back at her desk, she willed herself to shake off the distortion, turning a page on the screen and downloading information about the Clean and Chulo initiative for some awareness merit. Reading but not absorbing, her eyes went from sentence to paragraph as the dull ache in her chest began to sting. Her legs and arms were shaking, her vest was absorbing her sweat, her face got hot, and she suddenly yelped as her left foot began to spasm. She scrambled back to the bathroom, whacked open the cubicle door, braced herself against it, and realised she couldn't properly breathe.
Thanks, that was great.
I haven't read that for a while. I was like, oh.
So your dystopian paints, your dystopian world paints a picture that is probably very recognizable to a lot of people, especially as you go through the story. Yeah. I mean, like I said before, it's a very clean corporate dystopian world that I'm sure a lot of 20-somethings and older people as well can recognize. Thinking of the quote I gave earlier, I was just wondering regarding future and present, do you think we're heading towards a dystopia, or do you think we're already in one?
In terms of what's in my books, I think we're already there. Someone gave a review once and they said, what was it? They said a very accurate metaphor for today's society is the way that they described it. And I think that sums it up, because a lot of the things that we experience now are very dystopian in terms of their, I don't know, the way that people are segregated, the way that people are put into certain groups and certain boxes. And a lot of that, there's a lot of work to try and undo some of that. I mean, COVID was a massive example, wasn't it? I mean, that was a dystopian novel. No.
Inspired many dystopian novels.
Yeah, exactly. But I think in terms of the dystopian message that I'm trying to get across to younger people in this is that we are living in a place that determines your value based on what you've done, based on what you've achieved. And actually your value isn't determined by that. You are still worthy. You're still worthy. And yeah, I think we're very much there in terms of a society which wrongly, like intentionally or not, does paint that picture for us.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it is encouraged by various powers that guide us.
Yeah.
If you had a message then to, let's say, young people who felt trapped in this as you did at one point, well, you weren't necessarily trapped, you were actually eager at one point, and then realized. So what would be the message? Like you mentioned sort of the goal that you had with writing this, but let's say they were feeling trapped and were looking at how they can get through this. What would be your suggestion or your message?
I think it's just that, like, there's no right decision. Like, go with your gut in terms of what job you want to do at that time, what you want to pursue at that time. Don't compare yourself to other people, as hard as that is. Actually celebrate other people. And when you make those decisions, realize that life is about failing. Life is about learning and exploring. It's not about getting it right first time. I think that's one of the things that, especially people in their 20s now, they think, if I make this decision, it's got to absolutely be right because this is the rest of my life. And most of the time it's not.
Yeah.
You know, their actual dream job and dream career, you might start that when you're in your 40s. And it's actually just to enjoy the present and make a decision and go for it.
I'll make my 17-year-old daughter watch this because she's right at that stage where she's deciding.
Yeah.
And she's already decided, so we'll see. We'll see how it pans. Or maybe not. We'll see. Maybe she needs to be more flexible, right?
It's really interesting, the decision thing, because often you find if you're stuck in anxiety, it's often because you haven't made a decision about something. Like you're going back and forth. You're sort of like, oh, maybe I'll do that because of this, but then what if this? But if you make a decision and you're like, no, I'm going to focus on this decision, even if it all goes terribly wrong, at least I've made a decision.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Excellent. So the merit system in your book, now you obviously started this several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there wasn't already a social credit system in China at that point. Did you base it on that with a sort of hybridization, or did you just sort of come up with it clean?
So I was inspired by a few episodes of Black Mirror on Netflix. I don't know if anyone's watched that. They're sort of individual episodes, dystopian concepts, basically taking technology to its extreme and how humanity interacts with it. And there's an episode of Black Mirror which is very much people like vote on each other on their phones. So if I thought, Edwin, that you were rude to me, I could like demote you, and then that would make your score go down, and that would determine what sort of yeah, sounds all right, doesn't it?
No, don't do it.
That might mean that if your score is so low that you can't buy a house in a certain neighborhood, and that sort of thing. So I was inspired by those sorts of ideas. And then when I came up with what my world might look like, I was doing some research and I discovered the social credit system in China. And I was like, it exists. It exists. We're living in a dystopia. So yeah, it was a kind of amalgamation of being inspired by certain things that I'd read and watched.
It sounds actually like that voting system you described from Black Mirror is a nicer version of cancel culture in a way. In cancel culture, you just get cut off and taken down.
There's a fantastic episode, I think it's called Hated by the Nation, of Black Mirror about cancel culture. And me describing it, you're going to think this show sounds ridiculous, but there's basically these wasps that are they're like little machine wasps. And they had been programmed that if people use a trending hashtag, which is cancelling an individual, these wasps would all go and kill that individual. It's quite dark. It can be quite dark. But yeah, that's commenting on cancel culture, that actually these people who get cancelled are still people. Like, it's quite we could go into a whole can of worms on cancel culture. yeah, it's that dystopian message behind it, I guess.
Yeah. Slightly lighter. In the world building.
Let's go that light.
Oh, maybe lighter, maybe not. I mean, obviously, you have to make decisions when you're doing your world building, and so something that struck me very early on in the book was obviously the vegetarianism or veganism, or however extreme it was in the book. A lot of people eating a lot of kale and carrots.
Yeah, that green juice.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I didn't notice was insects.
Interesting. Okay.
Did you ever think to incorporate that, or how deeply did you go into the things like the food and the world building? Because that is something that's being talked about.
Yeah.
In some circles, unfortunately,
insects come in the second book.
They do.
There's very much there's another setting in the second book, and there's different insects in the second book. I mean, it's mainly set in a desert and stuff, but in the first book, I don't really go. Because a lot of the world building within the first book was very much setting the scene in terms of the merit system and how it works in terms of sport, in terms of food and that sort of thing. And as the journey goes on, you find out a bit more about where food is produced and all of those sorts of things. But as I was writing the first book, I wasn't thinking about insects, no, I'll be honest.
So when did you start the first book? Was that 22?
I started. It was actually originally published under a different name. So I started it in 2019, originally published it in 2021, and then republished it last year with a new cover and everything. And that goes to the thing about failing, is that the covers weren't right, the titles weren't right. We just didn't get it right. We needed to redo it. And that's okay, but I wouldn't have been able to do that without having that foundation of what I did before. I didn't get it right first time. And I still probably haven't got it all the way right.
So what was the first title then? Out of curiosity?
It was called Crowned Worthy.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Not as catchy. Yeah.
Not as catchy,
right. No. Okay. And also, 2019 might explain, I didn't notice, and maybe I didn't read enough of it, but artificial intelligence. Presumably, had you started writing this in 2023, for example, that would have featured much more heavily.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the world, it is so ran by technology that AI would just kind of be a given. So it's there.
So you assume it's in the background.
It's just there. It's happening all the time. My husband works in AI, so it's kind of, we have a lot of conversations about it. But it would very much just be the way that things are, you know. But it's not meant. I don't even think they would call it artificial intelligence, because it would just be technology. It wouldn't be anything different.
Running in the background.
Yeah.
That leads me mostly to the ends of my questions. I wanted to open it up to the audience. We're a bit cozier today, so feel free to ask anything on dystopian fiction or dystopian worlds, or
whatever you want.
Book marketing or anything.
I'm just intrigued why you think that today people are valued, and you don't think that we were in the past, that people weren't judged on their achievements. I think that's always been so.
Yeah, I would totally agree with it.
Now at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the difference for the younger generation is that social media makes that much more obvious. It gives it a metric system. You know, you've got followers, you've got you've basically got metrics to show that. I would agree with you that that's very much part of what it is to be in a human society, but I think it's exaggerated.
And so has the merit system. You know, we went to school when you got gold stars for being.
Yeah. Yeah. It's taught from a very young age, isn't it? Yeah.
And I went to visiting school in America where they also have the demerit system. You know, if you're naughty, you lost playtime.
Yeah.
Such things. So I think this idea of rewarding has always been there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's nothing new.
It's a bit on steroids now, though, isn't it? With the internet is basically a megaphone, and you can see everything all the time. So it would be like.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, no, it's true. I don't choose to generally, but you know, my daughter's generation grows up. It's their life, right? They connect their friends as much online as they do offline.
Yeah.
I mean, they spend more time on their phones than they ever do watching TV.
Yeah.
We're going, how did you turkey for the airport? You still strong?
That's it, isn't it? I've been reading a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which is a non-fiction book. And he talks about the difference between a phone-based childhood and a play-based childhood, that actually children, now that they've got phones and screens, have less opportunity to explore and play. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. The reward system's been there right from the start of civilization. It is just, that's a good phrase, it is on steroids for younger generations who are always choosing to look at social media. Because often they feel if they're not on social media that they're missing out on something. Yeah. So it's peer pressure. But there's loads of good things about social media. The connection it can give. It's just about getting a balance.
Definitely.
Like I've been off social media for a month. I often have like a bit of a detox. In terms of my own social media, I have to go on it for work-related reasons.
So can you just go back and say, if you get lots of merits in your book,
Yeah.
do you move into some sort of different, it's a bit like the caste system in India?
Yes, it's exactly like that. So you have...
Caste in India, you're born into just in terms of, like in Gravy World, when you have your, but then of course you're born into them, in Gravy World, because of your genetic input.
Yeah, so they sort of have different levels of, the whole city is set out in rings in terms of like the neighbourhoods. So you have the glorified quarters, which is in the middle, which is those with the highest merit scores. So you have to be over M500 to live there and be part of that community. You then have the inner rings and the outer rings, and it sort of moves out further from the target, if you like. And then you're...
All the people in the centre, are they really happy?
Well... You'll have to read the book to find out.
Is happiness relevant in a merit-based society?
But yeah, so people are born into certain communities, but they can always work their way up.
Is this worldwide, or is this set in a country?
It's set in a place. I don't want to reveal too much, that's the thing.
So do we have wars?
No.
Okay.
Well, not initially.
And do we have politics?
Yes, there's politics involved, yeah.
We've always sort of lived in a little creek, haven't we? I remember I was brought up on a council estate, and when my husband got a place at university, the first thing my mother-in-law said was, "No, you can't go. We don't go to university." And she was so worried that everybody around her would think that they were a bit, my son goes to university.
That's
My
interesting.
grandmother wasn't allowed because they were trade.
Oh, yes.
We're trade. Don't go to university.
That's interesting. Wow.
And you had to go down the mine, and he was supposed to go to university, and his dad said, "No, you're going down the mine." And he spent his time in the mine.
Is that primarily a British thing, or do you think it's Europe-wide as well? Because it's not a North American, obviously, but that kind of self-imposed hierarchy.
It's the class system.
But because where I grew up, it didn't exist. But yeah, well, it still does. Yeah.
British, especially back in the 50s and that, wasn't it?
My impression is that the fear was that your children would just abandon you.
Oh,
Right, okay.
Something positive, you wanting to retain your link to your children. You don't want them to lose.
Right.
Don't get big feelings.
I think Sue had a question.
Just following on from that, we've always understood we've got a very unpleasant class system, in my personal opinion. Americans haven't, in the same way. Theirs is based on work. So, although ours is perhaps more rigid, if you're at the bottom of the pile, tough. If you're successful in life, financially successful, you're at the top of the pile.
But in the U.S., you can go easily up and down based on your own abilities as well.
Not necessarily
You're not Mexican, but
No, it is. It is your abilities. It's not only your abilities, but it is also your abilities.
there's
Yeah.
love, there's support, but all these,
Yeah.
as is for now, that hasn't changed. What I was going to say, can I go back to books, please?
Yes, absolutely.
I've never had a gold star.
Oh.
Never had a gold star.
Gold star for what?
Well, maybe that's the question.
No, you didn't school, did you get gold star?
Julie's suggesting you didn't deserve one.
Sorry, you didn't get a gold star at school, you mean?
No, I never got one.
Oh, do you know that? It was your teacher. Your teacher got loads.
No, all of them got them.
We're dredging out some
Yeah.
deep-seated.
I know.
If I may go back
I think there's a question still.
and Anne mentioned it. You said about 1984, which is one of the classics. And of course, I was thinking about Brave New World, which was
Yeah.
that very dystopian, whereas 1984 was more of a story, if you like. So were either or both influential in writing your books?
I don't know how influential they were in the sense in 1984, the sort of city setting, the urban setting, was probably quite influential. I think it was that sort of idea of, it's probably more 1984 than Brave New World in terms of Big Brother is always watching you, and the watch is very much tracking everything that you do and rewarding or detracting points based on that. But yeah, I think the dystopian message behind 1984 was because it was written was it during the Industrial Revolution?
1948, I think it was written. Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's why it was 1984.
Yeah. Okay. Because he was very much making a comment of the overuse of technology, right? Or was that?
It's about communism.
Yeah. Or was it Brave New World was the technology one? I'm getting them confused now.
Brave New World was the technology.
Yeah,
and
that's
people
fine.
were graded
Yeah.
down to the poor old epsilons
Well,
who were the...
They were born that way, weren't they? They were literally born that way.
Yeah.
They were
Will be soon. Yeah.
1984
Was communism, you're right.
With the same very famous Big Brother is watching you.
Yeah.
Where control. But of course, the Second World War had just finished, where there was massive social control about what you could do, where you could do it,
Yeah.
even down to rationing people's food. And he was reflecting his time.
Yeah.
And taking that one step forward. So
Yeah.
I wondered if yours sound very much reflecting your time.
Absolutely,
by
yeah.
Taking that one step. So that's why I asked which if either of those books influenced you.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of when I was actually writing them, I wasn't reading them at the same time, but making a comment on a reflection of what I see in society, particularly for a certain generation, was definitely a approach that I would have taken from them. Yeah.
So do they start at school, this merit and being observed and trying to do... When does it start?
So you get your watch at 18. So you start getting tracked and stuff when you turn 18, but you are raised in what they call education centres. So you are the sort of mantra, the conditioning of working for merit and doing a lot of after school curriculum. Like, you don't do a lot of hanging out with your friends because you're doing so much work and all of that sort of stuff. That sort of thing is built into them while they're at education centres, and they have what's called the quals, which is their exam system and all of that sort of thing. So it's...
Do they not live within their families?
They do at that stage, yeah. They do at that stage, but then at 18 they move out and they have to go into the merit system by themselves to their own right. So yeah.
So do you explore the emotional side of that disruption, if you like? I mean, it's normal, isn't it? Finish school these days, go to university. It wasn't like that in my day, but that is pretty much...
Yeah.
And that's accepted. But in your world, do you explore the emotional impact, bearing in mind you're one step beyond where we are now?
The emotional impact of them going outside from their parents into the world. Probably not in these books, because the characters that I'm exploring are 24 and 26. Yeah. So they've sort of past that point. But I am actually writing a romance set in the same world, which is about an 18-year-old girl who has just got her watch, and she is one of 8 children. And one of the things you get as parents is, if your children do well, you get what's called indirect merit. So you get merit based on what your children achieve. And so her parents' strategy was, let's have a load of kids and they all be high flying, and then we'll get loads of merit. Quite ingenious, right?
That's similar to China's system with friends, isn't it? Because they do have that built in, where if you associate with people who have low scores, your own score will
yeah, so that happens in my book as well, in terms of networking and that sort of thing. So yeah, I've written 25,000 words of that. I've not had time to properly give it all that I want to give it, but it would explore more of that. She wants to be the most successful child, and she's the youngest of the 8, so she's the last one to go into the system. So just exploring that dynamic in terms of because she wants to leave home, she wants to go and prove herself to her parents. But actually, is there some emotion of like, if I'm not, what will that mean in terms of the way they see me? So yeah, so you've almost asked a question of what I'm going to. Yeah, exactly.
How good is that?
Well done.
Do you go down the rabbit hole of the ones who don't succeed?
Do you mean, sorry, what do you
What
mean?
happens to the ones who don't succeed?
They're just classed as unworthy. So they still operate within the society, but they won't be allowed in the certain areas of the city. They're seen as very unworthy to other people. They're not treated very well. That sort of thing. I have actually written a novella which is about a guy who doesn't succeed, and that's free to download on my website actually. So yeah, I guess I do.
Do your characters ever rebel? Because I can feel every fibre of my being rebelling. So how's that I would?
Yes, is a question. Is then
Revolution in
Your heroine's struggling, isn't she, when you're ready to have...
she is struggling.
She's either struggling or she's having a stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's obviously, not really very happy.
Yeah, and things happen. That is the sort of the start of the catalyst of the book in terms of her degrading mental health and what that means for her relationship with him, because if she drops in merit, he's thinking, well, I can't go out with her because she's going to be of a lower, as you were saying, that's going to put me... So there's all that whole dynamic that they have to battle through. In terms of rebelling, yes, so that sort of... the central characters initially know, but there's other groups and other communities, and there's rumblings under the surface that start to come to light at the end of the first book and that continue.
You must have a lot of mental health issues in there.
So rebellion is kind of a trope with dystopian.
Yeah,
fiction, isn't it?
revolution
It just depends on what type of rebellion, whether
Yeah.
it's personal rebellion like in Cyberpunk, or whether it's Hunger Games rebellion as in open war and things like that.
Yeah, I would say in terms of where the books go, in terms of books 3 and 4, which I've just finished, it's more of an open rebellion like the Hunger Games. So yeah, that definitely comes into it.
If I could make a point, speaking as an ex-librarian, in 29 years in the National Library, my department was made redundant when the government taken the money away.
Mm-hmm.
That was a decision I had nothing to do with. I had an option. I had a job at the end of the year. Your characters obviously have got some leeway in making decisions. Now, that decision was taken away from you. Having left, if you like, government service, I suddenly got free.
Yeah,
Because
interesting.
I could do what I wanted. Okay, I've got 2 little part-time jobs at the time. And these days, I've actually got back to writing, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
What you're describing there, please don't take this amiss. What you're describing there is what's currently happening in Putin's Russia. What happened in Nazi Germany and other places like that. You change the names, but the things that are happening in those books have historical basis. And
Yeah.
God knows what's going to happen in 50 years' time.
Or less,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
The person with a watch which simply tells the time, and the person who turns his phone off.
Yeah.
Where would I be in their society?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. And it's interesting, I relate to that thing of you feeling free, because actually when I got made redundant from my job, I did have a sense of freedom, because I was suddenly like, oh, because I'd just gone through the school system, into university, into work, doing the sort of thing that you do, and then I suddenly had this moment while it was also like, it was also, oh, how exciting.
I did a lot of travelling around Europe. My job involved working with agents in Western Europe. Everybody used to think, that's a great job you've got there. Not when you're sitting in Brussels airport watching the shops shut down and your aircraft is an hour and a half late meeting leads. That was the agency thought. In the end I thought, I don't want to play anymore. When the job was taken away, okay, yeah, I got a mortgage to pay, I got a son to put through university. But you would not believe how much of the weight came off my shoulders. And a different sort of pressure was given.
Yeah,
But it was something which I could at least control.
yeah. You had that choice. Yeah.
So we probably have time for one more question if there's any. John?
Yeah, I was wondering if to be able to write or to choose to call your world a dystopia, you need to have some concept of a utopia. And is there such a thing that remains stable? And if it isn't stable, are you not going to kind of whatever you do arrive back at, meander through various utopias. I mean, I thought if I was to write a utopia, I would have to sell it as a dystopia, because that would be how people would react to it. And most people's attempts at utopias are pretty dystopian in the general view, aren't they? But do you have that kind of alternative world that you're comparing this world with?
I mean, so false utopia is very much a genre of its own and a trope of its own. So,
but no one's claimed, no one since Thomas More has claimed this is a genuine utopia.
yeah. No, but, sorry, can you rephrase the question? What?
I was wondering whether you needed, I mean, you're calling this world a dystopia, but I mean, the things, I mean, China has gone down that road, we've gone down our road in response to something that was not like before. Does that not always happen, that you attempt various things and you try and correct something and you make something else bad happen? Is there a not bad situation, and would we stay in it forever? Or, I mean, and do you have such a situation? So
you're talking about writing a book that is very much a utopian of this is what works.
Well, whether you need that as a background before you yourself sit down and say this world is
utopian.
I
see.
Did you have it? Do you personally have it before you even think of writing? Do you have a concept of utopia?
Probably not, but in terms of a concept of utopia in the way that you might live your life, I suppose, in the sense of investing in your relationships and connection, and while work is important, actually, is it as important as those things? And that sort of your outlook on life. I could see maybe a concept of like a utopian idea there, but in terms of a whole utopian world, no, I probably didn't think about that.
It's almost like a utopian is a more personal thing,
Yeah.
whereas a dystopia can be imposed upon you in a way.
But I don't get the impression that your utopia is imposed. I mean, if you had a world where you say, your marks level has gone down to 15, so we have to shoot you, and say, yeah, that is great. But I mean, it's just, you have to put up. But
yes.
A lot of people, I mean, there's encouragement at schools to do well, and some people are driven by that. Others just say, do I care? I mean, it's people can be fairly relaxed about accepting the values of society.
Yeah.
In this system, there are pretty serious consequences for dropping your score. Yeah.
I mean, I'm feeling quite guilty about my position in relation to this. I've just taken part in a play which was partly based around the work of Captain McConaughey in the penal colony of Norfolk Island, whose great humanitarian and reform scheme was a point system for the convicts. And I have actually designed a point system myself for driving. So if we all were scored on whether we let people out at junctions, then I could say, right, I will let people out if they let people out. But I don't want to let somebody out who is looking appealing at me, but has never let anyone else out in their life. I'd like to automate that.
John is our local social reformer.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is on the road to the Chinese point system.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think perhaps on that note, maybe you can just tell us where you can find you online, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm active on Instagram and TikTok, but my website is probably the best place, which is lgjenkins.com. And I review.
Books.
Yes, they're all on Kindle. Yeah.
Great. So LG Jenkins, Lydia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.